As promised last month when I was with Hanif Abdurraqib, I'm in Chicago this month with Ruben Quesada, and he is going to teach us how to make his vegetarian chili. So, how do we do this?
Okay, so you'll need, you'll only need about half an onion.
Okay.
Chop that up. 2 stalks of celery, 2 green bell peppers, 2 to 3 jalapenos, 3 cloves of garlic, and then some black pepper, chili powder, oregano, cumin, and some beef crumbles, which are in the fridge.
Sure.
So chili is usually just like a big pot of...
You just toss everything
in there.
Okay.
So we're going to chop everything up.
Okay.
Toss it in there with some beans and some whole peeled tomatoes, and let it simmer.
And then we're good to go. And then we can sit down and chat for a little bit. But show me how to do this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've been told that I'm really good at dicing things.
Is that enough of a compliment to go on your CV? Is that X grade A dicer?
I don't know. You know, I heard that people are starting to put their Twitter retweets
really?
on there.
I had no idea.
Yeah, I don't know about that. So here we go. Let's chop some of this up. Do you want to chop anything?
Yeah, I want to see the excellence and try to reciprocate it. Oh wow! All right.
I know. I love these knives. Do you want to? How about you work on the celery?
It's tough to fuck up celery. I'm in.
Yeah.
All right. So is this a go-to meal for you?
You know, I love it in the winter. It's easy. It's quick. It takes just. I mean, it's a lot of chopping, but
Sure.
for the most part, it's something that you just can't really fuck up. So. I like it. I like doing it. It's good.
And where did you get this recipe from?
So I found this recipe online maybe about 4 or 5 years ago.
Sure.
Oddly enough, I hadn't really cooked chili until I moved to the Midwest.
Sure. Well, you were from California, right? So it's not really a California dish, I suppose.
No. Well, anything warm really isn't something that I grew up with in California, mostly because it's always hot.
Sure.
So,
what part of California are you from?
I'm from Los Angeles.
Oh, okay.
So LA, as you know, is always warm. Oh, you're quick.
Well, it can be a good thing though, being always warm.
You know,
I like seasons, but not everyone does.
No, I'm a really big sweater wearing
Sure.
kind of person. Oh man, these onions are gonna make me cry. How about
Cut up the peppers. De-seed them, or?
Yeah, you'll need to de-seed the jalapenos.
Okay.
I'll work on the peppers. Yeah, growing up in California was interesting. I like warm weather, but
well, it sounds like you found a look that worked for you with the sweaters, and you just clung to that.
yeah, and that's why I'm still here. Yeah, I like being in the Midwest. You know, after I left LA, I moved to Texas for school.
Okay.
And that weather was actually quite similar to LA. It was dry heat.
Right.
And moving to the Midwest hasn't been that difficult, I think.
Not that jarring from the other experiences?
No. Since I've been here, I haven't really experienced severe winter.
Okay. No blizzards or
No.
anything like that.
I must have brought the heat with me.
Yet another thing to put on your CV?
Exactly.
I bring the heat with me. Where in Texas were you at school?
I was in Lubbock, Texas. I went to the PhD program in creative writing at Texas Tech.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, it's great. I think it still is the only fully funded PhD program in creative writing.
Excellent.
Yeah. So it was good living in Texas. I was nervous about it because coming from California, you hear all kinds of things about Texas.
Sure.
Some of which might be true, but for the most
There are
part,
other people as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
I had a crush on a girl from Lubbock, Texas.
No way.
And she invited me to come visit her anytime, so I did. And that was not what she meant at all.
Oh no. Did you meet online?
I had met her in person on like a spring break trip when we were younger. She said, well, you've got to come visit me. So I went to visit her. And that was not a real invitation at all.
Oh.
So I spent a night at a Holiday Inn in Lubbock, Texas by myself.
Oh, how
and
sad.
then drove back to Ohio.
You drove there?
I know, it was a bad idea, Ruben.
Whoa, that's commitment. Oh my goodness.
So hopefully you had better experiences in Lubbock, Texas than I did.
I did. Well, yeah. But, wow, I want to hear more about that. That's really interesting.
Well, I was at Miami, and it was 4th of July, and everyone had left for the summer, and I was bored, and I got an invitation from a girl I had a crush on, and I took the invitation.
Oh, well, I probably would have done the same thing.
It's all right. It's all right.
We can put some things here. Oh. So you didn't even get to sightsee in Lubbock?
I didn't, and I heard such. I mean, I've been to Austin probably 3 or 4 times and really enjoyed Austin. And my wife, who's obsessed with bats, very much wants to go back to see the bridge where the hundreds of thousands of bats live. Sun goes down, they all leave at the same time. So she wants me to take her back just so she can see all the bats.
Oh, that would be cool.
A good friend of mine, Chris Mink, lives down there. I'm excited. We're working on a book of poems about silos, of all things.
Oh.
Yeah.
Silos.
I sort of took it as a challenge. He had the idea. What if we tried to write a book about silos?
Yeah.
So I said, challenge accepted. Let's
Awesome.
take a shot.
That's really cool. Austin's really different than Lubbock.
I would think so.
Yeah.
It seems to be its own little part of Texas.
Yeah. You know, flying into the Midwest, I saw a lot of similarities between West Texas and the Midwest.
Okay.
They're both kind of flat.
Sure.
But the major difference is obviously the population and the color of the landscape.
Sure.
So West Texas is brown,
Right.
and the Midwest is pretty green.
Well, if you drive through Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, it is pretty flat. You've got the mountains. But it's, for the most part, it's pretty. There's parts of Indiana you don't want to hang out in, but other than that.
I've been to Gary.
Okay.
I have. I went to see, I had a friend visiting from...
Was this a Music Man thing you were going for, or what?
Music Man. Music Man, yeah. Well, I went to go see Michael Jackson's childhood.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it was nice. You know, when I went down there, I didn't really know much about Gary, so my first impression of it was that it was, I don't know, kind of like a dying town, I suppose.
Sure.
But I didn't feel unsafe there.
No. It's much safer now that Mike Pence is gone. I mean, not safer for the rest of us in general, but the state in itself. I mean, they still got the Klan. That's where the Klan is. But
oh my goodness.
for the most part, things have improved since he left.
Yeah. You know, it's funny thinking about like all this Trump era that we live in. At the start of the year, I don't know if you remember, they had all these different Writers Resist events.
Yeah, I helped organize the one in Columbus.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, me and Kathy Fagan, and yeah.
Yeah, so I was thinking about that because the 1-year anniversary of that's coming up. And a friend of mine here in town who does a lot of work with immigrant rights, Jennifer Carmen.
Okay.
She wants to, we've talked about reorganizing another one for January.
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah, but it's strange because the response from organizations and people hasn't been as enthusiastic as it was at the start of the year.
Everyone's blood is sort of cooled and they're just not, okay.
Yeah, so I was thinking about why that might be the case, and I think there was so much despair after the election that people really needed to come together. They needed to feel like there were others who were feeling like them.
It was a great sequence of events. When Aaron and Chris first put together the idea of doing that all over the country, we in Ohio we ended up doing 5 or 6 different events in Ohio, and Phil, I'm going to say his name wrong, Metris, up in Cleveland ran with it, and we had one in Toledo, and tried to set up one in Oxford, but couldn't get the people to do it.
Oh.
But Cincinnati and Cleveland and Columbus, and we had 4 or 5 of them going. It was great. I'm surprised that the interest just sort of waned a little bit.
Yeah, it's unusual.
Because now there are more tangible things to be upset about, as
Right.
opposed to like the general fear that had come.
Yeah, I think that people, I get a sense that people have found ways to combat or resist in their own way.
Sure.
And I think that's great. I keep thinking about ways to keep people still in the loop, still kind of feel like they still have to resist.
Sure.
Or keep active.
Right.
So I had an idea of trying to do something with voter registration.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I don't think I know the status of that in Illinois and Chicago, like what the numbers are of people that aren't signed up.
You know, I don't know offhand, but as we've seen in the recent Alabama special election, it just takes people to, people need to just come out and vote, and many times it's people of color that aren't the focus of politicians' attention.
Sure.
And
they're
so,
trying to speak to all the white people.
to be direct, yes.
Yes, right.
So I really think it's important to try to encourage people of color to vote.
Yeah.
And I think one way to start that is just make sure that they're registered.
Sure.
And then show them ways that they can, or places where they can go vote.
Okay.
So I'm gonna pursue that idea and see what happens.
Maybe you can put together an event around that and try to get people to come sign up and experience an event, something like that?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I'm thinking about something closer to the election in the fall of next year.
Well, you'll definitely be able to really get people out in droves then, I would think.
Exactly.
I had an idea. My family was going to go on a vacation where 1 week I was there and 1 week I wasn't there. They had a chance to do 2 weeks and I can only do 1. And so I set up this thing in the middle of last summer. I did 18 hours of poetry on Facebook Live.
I remember that.
Where I read for 18 hours. And one of the groups I was trying to raise money for was the one that Tasha Coriel, Emerge Alabama. They had gotten together and tried to start everything for Doug Jones and tried to create sort of voter turnout and everything that led to the Doug Jones election like a year ago. And we ended up for the day, for reading 18 hours of poetry for the 5 organizations, I think I raised like $800.
Wow.
But for one day,
That's great.
that's not bad. And I had trouble speaking the next day, but my family was gone. I could just be quiet and watch movies, and
It was worth it.
It was fun.
Wow, congratulations. That's great.
Yeah, I'm excited. The next book I got coming out is about opioid addiction in Ohio, called 2 Towns Over, and I've connected with this group called Como Recovery in Columbus. And every month I'm going to do an online reading to help raise money for them. And then we're going to do, the launch is at AWP, but we're going to do an Ohio launch at the recovery place. And we're going to try to raise money doing readings in Ohio and things like that. So hopefully we can, they've got a 100% success rate.
Wow.
Where they don't do like when I went through the whole process, it was like a 12-week thing, right? They do it where they've 6 months, 9 months, and they do like 20 or 25 people at a time only. But they create this network that sort of keeps getting bigger and bigger. And so far, in their 5 or 6 years doing it, they haven't had any relapses.
Wow.
So they're doing just incredible things.
That's good.
I'm excited to help raise money for them.
Yeah, and how do you go about setting that up in terms of how do people donate?
Well, they have a GoFundMe page.
Oh, okay.
That way that, and the same thing, like when I did the 18-hour thing, I had links that I could give people, and at no point am I touching money or having anybody's money or anything like that. That way it's a little more direct, and we don't have to worry about
that's good.
any improprieties.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll just do it through them, and anyone in Ohio that wants me to come do a reading, as long as they donate at least $50 anywhere in Ohio, I'll come do a reading, living room, library, anything like that.
Wow.
So hopefully
you spend a lot of time in your car.
I do. Sometimes. I used to do a thing for elementary schools where for free I would come to any elementary school in Ohio and would do 2 hours of poetry workshops with little kids. And so we would do 2 hours on writing poems like animals, writing poems like inanimate objects. Saddest poem I've ever heard was this little boy who wrote a poem about a deflated basketball. Oh, break your heart.
That's sad.
That was that's what he was identifying with at that point.
Oh.
And so it's been fun, but to try to anywhere anywhere in Ohio, it's difficult to go out of the state for free.
That's incredibly generous of you.
But it's been fun, and I always end up at my kids' schools doing. I've written like 12 really silly kids poems about like mispronouncing the word hippopotamus over and over again, and farting and touching your bum on light bulbs and things. And anyway, so I can keep for about an hour, 2 hours, kids pretty well enthralled, and then the shtick goes old pretty quickly. But it works.
Wow, I would challenge every poet to go do something free in their local schools.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Well, and there's such enthusiasm. They get so excited that someone else is coming in and talking about something that they don't really know about. And then you hope that maybe they get excited. Yeah. And actually, it paid off. My daughter, we did there's a place called Wild Goose in Columbus that's like this arts collective and gallery and things. And we did a launch for one of my books there, and my daughter was the first reader. She wrote a poem called Love is Love. And she got up the mic, read the whole thing, and then introduced the next reader. Like she read the bio, she did the whole, super proud.
Wow.
She wanted a dress for them. Like, yes, let's get your dress, let's do the whole thing. And she was awesome.
Your kids are bright.
They're ornery. They're smart enough to be ornery, which is good.
Wow.
So when was the last time you made this chili?
Probably last year.
Okay.
Or at the start of this year, and it's cold.
It is 6 degrees in Chicago today, just to let you know.
I know. Yeah, this new apartment of mine, the radiators are so good. Are
you worried about it getting too hot in the summer? Is that the...
No, I mean, they'll turn them off.
Okay.
But, I mean, I have to crack the window in my room.
Wow.
It gets so warm. It's just, and so dry, these radiators.
Okay. Well, you've already alluded to jokes about you coming in hot and things like that. I mean,
it's true.
Yeah.
All right, I think we're done chopping.
Okay, what do we do next?
So we're going to heat a big pot on medium heat. Put about a tablespoon of olive oil in there. Good. Electric stove, which I don't like.
You prefer the gas?
I love gas stoves.
The click, 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 fire goes. It's great. It's worth it just for the sound.
So we're gonna start with all the oh, we forgot this.
Oh, do you have a...
I don't.
Okay, we just need to sort of smash it.
Yeah.
Okay. Got the garlic.
Yeah, cloves of garlic. We're gonna add the garlic. We're gonna add the onion. So we're gonna do all the white veggies first. Sure. Burn all the whites. And then we'll add the spices after the celery, after the onion and the garlic. So onion, garlic, spices.
Well, this sounds like it's going to be fun just to smell while we're talking.
I love it. Yeah, one of my favorite things about making chili is not only just the aroma of it, but I love the spiciness.
Sure.
So at one point, I was testing myself to see, challenging myself to see if I could, how much spice I could have. I didn't grow up eating spicy food.
Okay.
So it's something that I've acquired as an adult and interest.
Well, one of the best parts of chili is doctoring up how you like it with extra hot sauce or sour cream or cheese or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that the spiciest chili I've tried is a ghost pepper.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah. Surprisingly, it wasn't as spicy as I thought it would be.
So you were really like bracing yourself for it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just like, give me more.
Sure.
It's great. But there is a spicier pepper I just learned about.
Spicier than the ghost chili pepper?
Yeah. So so after the ghost pepper, I think they discovered the I think it's called the Carolina Reaper.
Oh wow.
And then
that's a daunting name.
It is. And then about a year ago, they found another spicy pepper that they developed in Britain.
So science made this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's the sort of thing that ends up ending the world. Just a pepper too strong.
Well, manufactured food is interesting.
Have I been watching too much sci-fi? That's what it's maybe it is.
I love sci-fi. I just recently re-watched Battlestar Galactica.
Okay.
Yeah, the last season, and there was so much I didn't remember. Did you ever watch it?
I watched it through one time and really enjoyed it. It was like a grad school thing where we spent like a week or two watching nothing but. What were the bigger ones for me? I liked Firefly a lot.
Oh.
I liked, I guess Fringe was kind of sci-fi. I liked Fringe a lot.
Oh, yeah. I love Fringe. It was like everything that I always wanted the X-Files to be.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, it was good.
Well, it made all those weird things that Mulder and Scully thought might be real, actual reality, like other dimensions and all the different, yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
You know, I read that the Hat Man, those men that would come in, they were from the future.
Yeah.
Right? That people in real life have seen people that look like that, like apparitions. They're called Hat Men.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And they think it's
So maybe that's where they got the idea? They had read about that sort of thing?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you believe in time travel or ghosts?
Maybe yes on the ghosts.
Maybe.
I think the idea of energy and that when someone dies, the energy goes somewhere and things like that, that makes sense.
Yeah, I totally believe that.
Time travel, I don't know.
I don't know either.
I feel like people would show up. I don't know if 2017 is a place I want to go, but I feel like if it had been invented, we would have met time travelers. I don't know. Or maybe that time is a loop and not, yeah.
I think time is a loop.
Okay.
What about extraterrestrials?
It's gotta be, right? The universe is too big.
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, when you hear scientists and physicists talk about that sort of thing, it's like there's too much wide open for there not to be some, like the math of it says that there would have to be somewhere. Something. Yeah.
Yeah, Stephen Hawking says, he says leave it alone.
Sure.
Don't try to reach out. Right?
It's probably best.
I believe it. I'm going to grab a spoon here.
Yep.
I'll get a teaspoon and a tablespoon. So we're going to add a teaspoon of cumin, 2 tablespoons of dried oregano.
Okay.
Okay. And so we're just going to put that right into the pot. Start smelling really good soon.
What about you and ghosts?
You know, it's funny. I just wrote celery and jalapenos. And Bill. I just finished revising a poem that's in a chapbook that I just edited.
Awesome.
That should be coming out next year.
This one has a home?
It has a home.
Great. Where's it coming out?
So I'm gonna wait and announce that later.
That's fine.
But
you're excited. You're smiling.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Great.
I'm excited because they're poems from my new collection.
Okay.
So the poem that I worked on that's in there is about seeing a ghost.
Okay.
So many years ago, I was dating someone, and we went away like on a weekend trip.
Sure.
And I woke up very early in the morning. So about 5:30 a.m., something like that.
Yeah.
Gets really cold.
Sure.
So it's just at like the break of dawn.
Right.
And I woke up. We were in Santa Barbara, so there was a little bit of sun, kind of light out. And I remember looking out towards the window, and I don't know how it happened, but there was this strange looking like silhouette.
Okay.
It's like a bluish color. And I woke up, I looked over, I was still a little bit sleepy, and it started kind of materializing into an image.
Okay.
And it was like a face of this man with a big bushy mustache.
Okay.
But I could see through it, so it was almost like a hologram.
How long was he there with you?
So as soon as I saw it, I just freaked out and I put my head under the covers.
Sure.
And I just thought, did I really see that? And so I kind of peeked back out and it was gone. So it was just like
sure.
a brief instant. And even today, I'm not sure if I was really fully awake or not.
Right. Okay.
Because I've had other moments where I'll get up in the middle of the night, I have to go to the restroom or something,
sure.
and I see something,
and out of the corner of your eye, and you're not sure what it is. That kind
yeah,
of
and then there's nothing there. So I don't know, but it felt so real, and I could still see that face. So it turns out that when we went home after that trip, when we went home after that trip, yeah. So now we're going to add 2 cans of these diced green chilies.
Okay.
So
you came back from the trip.
We came back from the trip, and we went to.
You gonna open these up?
Sure. And we need to drain them. So those are all the beans. Those are all the beans, and the corn will be the very last thing we add.
Okay. Are the beans coming next, or the tomatoes?
The tomatoes are coming next.
Okay. So you came back from the trip.
Came back from the trip, dropped my date off, and I described this this specter, this image that I saw, whatever it was, this ghost, to my date, and he said that it sounded a lot like I was describing his uncle.
Really?
Who had passed away a long time ago. Careful.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Follow that. So you saw his uncle.
So he showed me. He then told his mother about it, and she also agreed. They found a picture. Showed me the picture of the uncle who was her brother who had passed away. Many years ago.
Sure.
And it looked exactly like him.
Holy shit.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really strange.
No, I've been much more of a sounds and doors closing and different things and houses where I knew that there had been someone living before we moved in and different things like that. But I've never seen any apparitions or things like that.
Yeah, that was my first time seeing anything like that, like anything that looked like a person.
You are better with the can opener than I am. I'm somehow mangling.
It's an old can opener. Okay, so in the pot we added some olive oil, garlic, onion.
Okay.
Teaspoon of cumin, 2 tablespoons of dried oregano, the celery, the jalapenos, the bell pepper. I just added the 2 drained cans of green chilies.
Okay.
We're going to add something that's in the fridge.
Okay.
And these are beefless crumbles.
Oh, those can be good. My wife doesn't eat meat, and so we'll do like egg cook-ups with those and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
And then if she's ever done a night out, my kids and I will do rib night or something because I like eating it.
Yeah.
I'm really excited. We talked briefly about Alabama before we started filming, and there's a barbecue place down there called Dreamland Barbecue that's just incredible. And my sister-in-law came back from Alabama and brought me a giant thing of their sauce.
Oh.
So I'm very eager to use that.
You know, the first time, this is weird. Well, I mean, I grew up in LA, and so there's certainly like plenty of restaurants of all kinds there, like in a major city. But I grew up in, my family's from Costa Rica in Central South America, and so the type of food that we eat wouldn't necessarily include ribs.
Sure.
So I didn't have ribs until I was probably in my early 30s.
Okay.
Which is strange for many to hear, but
sure. Well, if it's just not it's not on the menu, you're never going to pick it. So.
No, and it's not something that I would necessarily like seek out.
Sure.
So I was driving from when I was here in the Midwest down to New Orleans for a conference.
Okay.
I love New Orleans, by the way.
It's fantastic.
Yeah. So I stopped in Memphis and I had ribs for the first time.
Purposely, like you were going to go, like, I'm going to go to Memphis and get ribs. Okay.
Yeah. And it was amazing.
Were they?
Yeah, it was like in this food.
Any of those places that just have like the loaves of white bread on shelves and they give you like, oh, here's 3 pieces of white bread to go with the ribs.
Yeah, it was great.
There was a guy down there, my month and a half down in Tuscaloosa, I became fast friends with a guy named T from T's Ribs and Things. And Monday through Saturday, it's gone now, there's condos there instead.
Aww.
But T is still making food and like showing up at bars at midnight to sell his sandwiches and things like that. Oh, he's an angel. He's an angel. But Monday through Saturday was a rib joint, and on Sunday it was a church, and T would preach. It was the best. It was not the best barbecue in Tuscaloosa, but it was the greasiest and sort of like most decadent of like. I mean, God was clearly behind T's barbecue.
Wow.
And then there would be this giant television that had the gospel channel on at all times. We lived on the dividing line of town where things got bad pretty quickly. And so we'd walk across the street to T's, and then there was a gas station where you could get, they didn't have pop in the Pepsi containers, they had like big things of booze in them.
Oh.
So it was, and belt buckles, there were belt buckles.
Belt buckles?
Yeah, so it was a gas station, you could get anything. It was fun, but Tuscaloosa was hot enough that it got me to quit smoking.
Oh.
We moved in the middle of the summer, and the month and a half down there, it was so hot every time you went out to smoke.
Mm-hmm.
You're like, fuck this.
Oh, I know.
done.
I know. Did you smoke for a long time?
It was mostly when I drank. But about 5 years, maybe?
Oh.
Yeah, and then really it was Tuscaloosa, it was just too damn hot.
Yeah, I used to smoke when I was in grad school.
Okay, it might just be a thing that comes with being a writer in grad school.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. I miss it sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I just like the conversations that end up happening among smokers. That's always fun. Because you never quite, if you're outside smoking with someone you don't know, like the weirdest shit can come up. I don't know. You meet people that way in a different sort of thing. Because they're like, especially now with so many people not smoking, I imagine there's a camaraderie that comes with it.
Yeah, you're the outsiders.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna add some whole peel tomatoes.
Okay.
So this is a lot of tomato. So just pop those right in there. They're really big. Tomatoes, and then we're going to add some chili powder, some black pepper.
Okay.
We're going to let it simmer for about 5 minutes. Then we'll add the beans, the drained beans, and we'll almost be finished. This smells delicious.
It does really smell good. Tuscaloosa. I don't think I've ever spent any time in Alabama. Well, if you leave Tuscaloosa and head sort of out in the county, it can get dicey. But between there and Birmingham, I had a lot of good times. And my sister-in-law's in Birmingham now, so end up heading down there. And a friend of mine, Chris Michael, who writes for Runner's World, just moved down, or used to write for Runner's World, is down there. So there'll be plenty of reasons to go get the good barbecue and see everyone.
Nice.
There's an amazing donut place I found in Birmingham. We do donut Fridays at my house, where every Friday we go out and buy donuts somewhere, and my son likes to take them around Columbus. Like his idea was we should take donuts to everyone in Columbus.
Oh.
We don't do that, but we, depending on where we go, there are different people we'll take donuts to. There's a place on the east side called Resch's, which has been there forever, and not doing well with that opener. and Maggie Smith. Maggie Smith lives in Columbus, and she lives near Rush's, and she and her daughter go there. And so, like, when she was teaching at OSU, I would go by Rush's, and my mom works at OSU, and I take donuts to Maggie, and I take donuts to my mom, and then take donuts to different people downtown. I've got friends that work at City Hall, and so we would deliver donuts for like 3 hours.
Wow, that's really cool.
It was fun, yeah. So we tried that. I'll watch your hand. There I go. A little bit. I'm going to leave it to you as the veteran with that, since it doesn't like me. So that's on Fridays. There's always donuts and donut delivery, and we'll take them to his preschool. We'll take them to the barber shop. We'll take them different places.
Do you go to different donut shops?
Yeah, there's about 5 or 6 that we really like in Columbus. And if we're really lazy and not going to take them to anywhere else, we'll go like through Tim Hortons or something like that. But there are these little shops. There's one on campus called Buckeye Donut that's got great donuts. There's one called Honey Dip. There's Rush's. There's different things.
Wow.
There's one that's just starting up near where we live called Tupelo Donuts that's starting up. And they've got a donut truck that you can find in different places. And so it's a thing. His sister had started to go to kindergarten, so she was gone all day. And he wanted to find a way to still make those days special. So we started Donut Fridays.
That's
and
nice.
we make it a big thing. And yeah, he's got buddies at Kroger, the grocery store, there that know he'll come in on Fridays, and we'll like give him high fives about, hey man, it's Donut Friday, what are you picking today? That kind of, it's fun.
Wow.
But anyway, there's a place in Birmingham that is you gotta get to, and they did like, she brought me some Thanksgiving themed donuts they did. Like cranberry donuts.
Ooh.
Oh yeah, it was delicious.
That sounds tasty.
Yeah.
There's so many cool people in Ohio. Poets, I mean.
Well, just the list of people in Columbus at this point is daunting. It's run through the list.
Mary Bittinger there?
She's up at Toledo or Akron. Sorry. But Columbus is Kathy Fagan and Maggie Smith and Hannah Stevenson and Leslie Jenneke and Josh Klutz and Hanif Abdurakeeb's there now. And
Lisa Mesqua? Is she there?
She lives somewhere else.
Oh.
I'm trying to Hanif.
I see Hanif and her always Instagramming.
Right. She lives somewhere else. I don't know. The last time I saw her, she was in Columbus, but I think she lives somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
Ruth Alad.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's been, I think Marcus Jackson's been in and out of town. I don't know if he's still there, but he was at LSU for a little while. So it's, and there's been this surplus of reading series that I've started, like Hannah Stevenson and Joy Sullivan and David Winter that started, Paging Columbus, which there's always a lot of great people coming through. There's 6 or 7 of them now. So you end up just not being able to go to really as many as you'd like to go to. And like the Ohio Poetry Association is run by a guy named Chuck Sammons, and he's in Columbus, and they do events all over the state. Our first poet laureate is in Columbus, and then we get David Baker and Ann Townsend, who are over at Denison, which is about 35 minutes away. Nin Andrews, who lives like 45 minutes south, I think, somewhere.
You know, David Baker and Ann Townsend put an anthology together that has been like the cornerstone of so much of the poetry that like I write and read.
Okay. What's this one called?
It's a collection. It's the lyric. Oh God, now I'm blanking on it. It's a collection of essays that started, I think, as lectures at AWP about lyric poetry.
Okay.
So Ann Townsend especially, she has one called. It's on the Sublime.
Okay. I have a book of hers. Is it Coronary Garden? Or I'm trying to remember. I picture the cover of it.
It's probably right over there on my bookshelf.
Something.
But yeah, I mean, they have such great like ideas about lyric poetry.
Well, I grew up on Kenyon's campus essentially, which is right next to Mount Vernon. My mom worked there, and so I knew everyone in the history department and English department, and like David Lynn. Was in charge of the Kenyon Review, and different people who came through. The history department framed a copy of my first published poem for me, like as a gift.
How cool!
And it was in poetswithaz.com, but they were nice enough to go ahead and print off the copy and frame it for me.
How old were you?
22.
You're young.
Excuse me.
Wow.
But that was a fantastic gift. So
That's really nice.
and the poem itself is rather embarrassing, but it ends with asking a young lady, "Will you be my Vietnam?" Which is not my proudest poem, but yeah, it works.
Well, that's very nice of them to do that for you.
It was. So yeah, and just in Ohio, and that's you get into Cleveland and Akron and Cincinnati and all those, and
I've been wanting
a
to
roster.
visit the Cincinnati Museum of Art.
It's pretty great. And Columbus Museum of Art just expanded as well, and Sundays are free.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I gave up driving earlier this year.
Did you?
Yeah.
What prompted that? Bad experience, or they just told you not to anymore?
They told me not to. No. Well, you know, I grew up in LA, where to get anywhere, realistically, you have to drive.
Sure.
There are buses and
Well, the system here with the trains and everything.
here, yeah, it's amazing. I love the train system here.
Mhm.
So I just take the train everywhere.
Cool.
Or the bus. I'm adding chili powder and black pepper now.
Okay.
But yeah, when I had my car, I would drive everywhere. You know, I drove to New Orleans for a conference. When I was touring the U.S. visiting museums, I drove to the museum at Miami University.
Right.
So now I can't make those trips, but I need to visit some museums in Ohio.
There you go. We'll get you that. We always do a big weekend with our kids where we'll go up and stay downtown in Cleveland, and then go to a ball game, and then go to the Natural History Museum and the Art Museum, which are right next to each other.
Oh.
And I ended up going up there a lot. I wrote a collection about when they tried to blow up the Thinker.
Oh.
Yeah, and a radical group in the 70s called the Weathermen tried to blow up the cast of the Thinker, which was one of the original 20 casts that Ruben did. And they sort of fucked up the dynamite. And what they ended up doing, because they had written a message on the pedestal, and the explosion blew up whatever their message was. And all it did, it mangled his legs, and it knocked him off.
Oh.
And they ended up deciding just to put him back up the way he was, because the other ideas were to recast it some way, but obviously Ruben was long gone, and the fact that he was one of the original cast, they just didn't want to mess with it. So if you go up outside the Museum of Art there's the blown up Thinker. You see him from about here to his legs, it looks just like the original cast, and then it's shrapnel, essentially. So I wrote a collection of poems about the bombing of the Thinker.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's really interesting to stand outside and look at it for a long time. And
Wow.
there's just a little plaque that said in 1979 and 1980, whatever it was, that some terrorists tried,
Wow. I was thinking about bombs the other day, mostly because I just think about countries where there are a lot of bombings.
Sure.
And you don't hear about a lot of bombings here in the U.S.
Mostly guns.
Mostly guns. Yeah.
But there hasn't been a serious bombing since Oklahoma City,
Probably.
maybe?
That we know about.
Right, this is true.
Okay, let's add those beans.
Okay. And then the corn is last.
Corn is last, so I'm adding kidney and garbanzo. And you can add black beans if you'd like.
Okay.
But I'm not going to. I grew up eating a lot of black beans.
So they've sort of lost their...
They're magic.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So. Yeah, it's interesting. These big. Speaking of like bombings and news events. I was telling you that I was editing my chapbook.
Sure.
And a lot of the poems that I'm writing use these interesting historical moments. And it depends on what we have access to, what the media chooses to feature or report on that allows us to know whether or not something actually happened.
Right.
Unless we were there or know someone who was there. But I started writing about these people in history that were almost just short blips. Like, so there's a poem about a man who, and this is just a vague memory when I was a child in the 90s, who drove his car to the top of this overpass. So, have you watched the movie Speed?
Yes.
Okay. So the bus ends up driving on this freeway and kind of leaps over this gap.
Right.
Yeah. So that gap, that freeway, was a fairly new freeway that opened in Los Angeles.
Okay.
It'd been planned for years since the 70s. And
Okay.
It finally opened in the 90s, in 93, I think.
Okay.
And so, so it wasn't actively used yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so the film company, the production company, chose to use that as the freeway to film Speed on.
Okay.
Because it was accessible.
Right.
So once the freeway opened, there are these really interesting kind of interchange ramps.
Sure.
So you've probably seen the SNL skit called The Californians,
Yes.
where they, right? So so that's the 105.
Okay.
And so there are these interchanges that are very tall. They're the tallest in the city.
Okay.
And when you're up there, when you're driving, you can see the entire city. It's gorgeous.
Wow.
So they connect to the 110, and that's the 105. So this man drove his car, it was like 3 or 4 in the afternoon, and stopped at the top of one of these interchanges.
Sure.
And stopped traffic, and he ended up committing suicide there, and it was broadcast on TV. Wow. Yeah,
Okay.
like 3, 4 p.m. They interrupted like everything, and
Sure.
around that time they would show like cartoons. It was like after school.
Oh wow.
And so,
Right.
you know, here I am at home.
Watching the man jump off. Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty tragic.
Yeah, no kidding, and unexpected.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's next?
So we let this simmer for about 45 minutes, and then it should be ready.
Excellent. Well, we'll get a chance to, while this simmers, sit down and talk to Ruben some more about community building, poetry, and all manner of fun things. So we'll be right back. So we got a little time to talk. Tell me about all the community organizing you're doing here in Chicago. It seems like as much time as you spend on your own writing, you spend much more time sort of bringing people together for different organizations and causes and things like that. Who are you working with now, and where do you find the energy to do all these things?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. So at the start of the year, I think really motivated and inspired by Aaron Ballou, I helped organize the Writers Resist readings here in Chicago. We had 9 simultaneous readings.
That's incredible.
Yeah, in different neighborhoods, and each reading was led and organized by other writers. And so now I'm in touch with a woman who teaches at a community college here in Chicago and works with immigrants and is interested in immigrant rights. And so she and I have started thinking about ways to keep community members informed and how to organize another Writers Resist event. The director of 826 Chai, which is an organization that is interested in literacy and encouraging children to develop a passion for reading, is someone that I've been in touch with, and she and I have started talking about different ways to get me involved in the organization.
Okay.
So
that sounds like that'd be a lot of fun.
I think so too. You know, hearing your story about going into schools and offering workshops,
sure,
I think is incredibly generous, and I think it's a great way to get children interested in reading and in writing. So, you know, that's giving me some ideas.
Well, and it's if you go into, especially kids young enough, if you can talk about something that they're not used to hearing about in terms of poetry or in terms of writing things that just approaches it from a new way. If you get, I mean, you can create lifers. You can create people that just absolutely adore writing and reading. And, you know, if in a year talk to 200 or 300 elementary school students, maybe 5 of them are just on your side now, right? They're going to be dedicated to experience in life that the same way that I did growing up. This was all, I played a lot of sports, but it was mostly reading all the time until it was sort of deemed to be acceptable for me to spend all my time doing that. And I still did sports in high school and college and things like that, but I was always so fascinated. We'd have these great illustrated history, great illustrated books that had, the Three Musketeers and all the things, and it would be a page of illustration and a page of the story. And you could read them in an hour and a half and sort of get the gist of these great stories. And so that was sort of my entryway into finding a way to connect with a world of reading that's carried with me the whole time. So I'm sure there are kids in those classes that just think I'm silly and will go on with their lives, but maybe there's a few that they're like, well, that was fun. I liked writing a poem as a panda bear or whatever it might be. So it definitely feels good when you get to experience it.
Yeah, and you came away with 5 more that you didn't have before.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I was on a panel, and we were talking about how to bring poetry into schools more because funding keeps getting cut for different things and so on. And my solution was, well, we put it into the schools. If they can't afford to bring someone in, or because children authors, people have to eat.
Yeah.
And it's completely understandable for someone who's coming from out of state or from to get the money to go there and to visit, and I take that money too. That's fine. But Ohio's been important enough to me to anywhere in Ohio do it sort of thing for free. And if poetry and different arts and things are leaving the schools because it's not cost effective to have them in the schools, then for your locale, take it upon yourself to make sure it's being in the schools.
Yeah, for many years I've been in touch with the community director at the Poetry Foundation and trying to brainstorm ways to increase poetry's visibility in the community. Well,
they had, I remember seeing an application for sort of like a community building thing that they were doing, like a sort of boot camp to teach community organizing and things like that. I don't remember when it was happening, but I remember seeing the application for it.
Yeah, they're really interested in being more present in the lives of ordinary people.
Sure.
And I think one way to ensure the longevity of poetry and writing is to speak to younger people.
Sure.
So they're really active with youth poetry competitions, but I'd really like to see a stronger presence in schools.
Okay.
And I think 826 Chai is a good way to do that. I think the Poetry Foundation, because they're a nonprofit organization, they really have to go through several different channels to get anything done. So it might be a little more difficult, but they have so much money.
Well, and they do good things with it, but there's maybe some different. Maybe they're too big to just walk into a school to do something. I don't know.
Yeah, and there's so many schools, right?
Sure.
How do you choose which school?
Right.
You're going to get a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
So I understand that hesitancy there, or whatever the reason is.
Well, Chicago has such a fantastic base community of writers and poets and things like that that I imagine there would be the people that put forth the effort would be there if a program like that presented itself. I tried to make sure I would go to like rural Ohio where poetry is not necessarily on the forefront of people's minds, that those are the first places it sort of gets dropped from the curriculum and things like that. But poetry sometimes gets talked about like it should be handled so delicately, but to talk about the nuts and bolts and the fun parts of it with kids really sort of increases their awareness of what it can become. That it can be fun and constructive, and it can be something that they can touch and they can use. Because sometimes, if you don't know anything about poetry, it's sort of an up here sort of thing.
Absolutely.
And in actuality, it's just it's fun and it's easy to handle. And even in the difficult situations and topics that come up, it can be something that's has an energy and music to it that kids can appreciate.
Yeah, it's interesting that I just recently taught a class at Columbia College, a Latino literature class, and in it I used contemporary poetry, and many of the students there aren't literature majors. It's an art school, so there are all kinds of different artists, but Yeah, as we go through public school or school generally, we have to have some kind of exposure to literature, and their exposure to poetry was quite minimal, and many of them felt really lost. So it just surprises me that poetry seems so impenetrable for so many people.
Thus the hashtag Teach Living Poets.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, I don't know. Poetry is just another form of storytelling. And
Yeah.
I think once people understand that, I think it'd be easier to access.
Sure. Well, and you're part of this sort of confluence of writers in the Midwest and Chicago, and we talked about Ohio, of living poets that are doing the kind of work that is exciting. That's not necessarily something that needs the kid clubs to handle, and really finding sort of the lost is the high language and some of the form, not all the form, but a way to connect to poetry that really brings more people in than maybe it used to. And so it's been maybe the last 5 years, this sort of groundswell of poetry has been great, and a lot of it's coming from Chicago and people like you. And have you felt that in your own work and sort of enthusiasm increasing, or?
I don't know if it's because I'm in the literary community or I'm quite active, that I see poetry everywhere, or is poetry really everywhere?
Or just because it's day to day for us that it feels like it's,
but I certainly do feel, and I'm excited about its presence today. I see more publications like Vanity Fair or Entertainment Weekly writing about books of poetry, which I don't remember seeing when I was younger. So that's quite exciting.
It is.
I think poetry is certainly finding a greater place in mainstream media, and I'm really happy to be part of it right now.
I mean, we're a ways off from sort of Pushkin in Russia and statues being erected, but there's more attention.
That would be amazing, wouldn't it?
There's a friend of mine once gave me a book called Pushkin's Button. It was all about the duel that he died in that never had to happen. All about sort of the stories about his wife and her affair and all this stuff that were all lies, but he had to fight the duel anyway. And,
goodness. That reminds me of Back to the Future. Whenever Marty McFly is called a chicken, he just has to do it. He has to get into the fight.
I have been blessed with being able to avoid that sort of achievement.
That's good.
I'm fightless thus far. I don't know if it'll ever happen.
No.
It'll be fine. So in your own right, you said that you're working on a new collection. You've got a chapbook placed somewhere that will be revealed at a later date. And what are all the poems in the new full collection about?
So they all began about writing this collection started about 10 years ago, when I took on the task of translating a collection of poetry by an early 20th century Spanish poet named Luis Cernuda. And
I see a book right there.
Yeah, so this was published by Oriole Press. At the University of Toledo. And so this is just like this was a limited print of translations of two of Cernuda's collections. So when I was in...
That's beautifully put together.
They did a really good job. When I was in graduate school, in my MFA program, I acquired permission from Cernuda's estate to translate two of his books. One is called Las Nubes, or The Clouds, and another collection. And so Las Nubes has not been translated into English.
Is that something that you'd like to undertake?
So that's what I've been working on. And so the new collection that I'm working on, in its current iteration, is new poems, and also intermixed with translations of Cernuda.
Well, that could be great.
Yeah. And so Las Nubes was written during the Spanish Civil War in the late 1930s, and also during the start of World War II. So Cernuda in the collection is really kind of interrogating his faith and He's doing something that T.S. Eliot did with the Four Quartets, which is quite similar, trying to understand humanity's place in the world with technology and also religion's place with all this devastation. And so
confronted with sort of the godlessness of war and all that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm finding that the poems in my collection are doing something quite similar.
And fit in well with sort of, despite the apparent world war, it would fit in well with our times, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people lost faith in, or are losing faith in humanity, and they blame it on technology, they blame it on politics. And so these poems really are my own wrestling with faith.
Okay.
I grew up Catholic, but I sort of abandoned religion in my early teens, but found myself continuously going back to religion in times of crisis.
Sure.
And so these poems look at how I'm understanding religion or spirituality.
Well, there's a tether there that you're connected to, and you can sort of twist and adjust and try to get it to fit in with what's going on now, and that sounds exciting.
Yeah, so I'm really excited about it, and it's the manuscript itself is under consideration at a publishing house.
Great.
And I hope to hear something about it at the start of the year. And as I told you, the chapbook has been accepted for publication elsewhere.
Right.
So I'm excited about my work and
Sure.
where it's going to go next year.
But the focus and increased attention on poetry, and hopefully that attention finds more of your work. I mean, I've just read you had a piece in Tupelo Quarterly that was fantastic, and is that part of the manuscript or?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah, so those two poems, three poems, were titled Communion and Confession. So there's this interesting idea of organization in the manuscript surrounding the sacraments, which are part of my religious background, and so those poems were organized in a way that allowed me to understand where I was going.
Sure.
So. Yeah, those are some interesting poems. I think they demonstrate my attempt to try to figure out what religion's role is in my life today.
For me, it was the proselytizing that rubbed me the wrong way. And when I was a teenager, and I grew up in Mount Vernon, of all places, there was a large contingency of Indian Americans. And my best friend, Paras Patel, and I had two other really good friends, Ashwin Raj and Vivek Amin, and I was confronted at my church that you should really try to convert them from Hindu to Christianity. That's your obligation as a Christian. To which I responded with, no, not at all. Well, if you don't tell them about it, then they're going to go to hell. You should really try to, bring them to our side. And if you don't try, then you're probably going to go to hell too. To which my response was, all right, I'm out.
Wow.
See you guys later.
It's harsh.
But yeah, it was to have friends that were solid and sort of very happy in their faith. That was a different faith than mine, and to be charged with confronting them about that just seemed out of place. And that was sort of what drove me away.
There's this interesting idea about religion that reminds me of the evolution of language itself, and how, and this is something that I talk about when I teach translation, that different languages were created to keep secrets, so groups of people couldn't understand the information that you were sharing with your community.
That's why they kept the Bible in Latin for so many years, right?
Yeah. So I see religion in a similar way. There are these different iterations, but ultimately we all believe in something that's greater than ourselves, and something that there's something good inherently in the world.
It doesn't have to be a secret. It doesn't have to be kept in a text. It should be shared.
Or within a particular religion.
Sure.
So
right.
It's interesting how there's this desire to convert someone to your own religion when they have their beliefs that are quite similar to your own. So.
And my wife is invested in church, and my kids go to church and everything like that. And there's so much beauty that comes with the process, especially when you're a child of religion, that it felt strange to deny them that. And so I haven't joined the church with them, but we go all the time. They sing, they do readings at Christmas, and they do the whole thing, and they love it. They love the community, and anyone who is willing to love and take care of your children in any way is always going to have a big place in your heart. So I'm excited to see them enjoying that process of it. I just haven't joined them back in full faith.
I think that's good.
Yeah.
I mean, they see that there's another side of it.
Sure.
Yeah, and that it's okay for them to do it. I think religion is about love. I think that's what Christ wanted.
Well, it's trying to find the light in all the darkness and things like that. And I think you can find it in many ways, and religion is definitely an avenue for that as well. How in the last year or so have you gone back to your faith more and more with sort of the ongoing, or?
I find myself reading the Bible more.
Okay.
Mostly out of research.
As ammunition against hypocrites, or?
Well, that helps too.
Sure.
That's
not what that means at all.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's so many interesting things about the Bible. So I was just brushing up on Revelation, the book of Revelation. There are some good stories there, and but I'm still not. I still wouldn't say I'm religious.
Sure.
I don't know if I have a renewed interest in religion outside of just looking at it creatively.
Sure.
But I think I started turning back to religion when I moved here to Chicago, mostly because it was I was back in a big city, and I hadn't been in a big city since I lived in Los Angeles. So I left LA when I was about 30, spent 5 years in Texas, and I was in Lubbock, which had about 250,000 people, and so that really slowed everything down for me.
Okay.
And it was seeing the world in a different way that I'd never understood before, and what it allowed me to do was to slow myself down and really learn how to appreciate and connect with other people. And in that way, I feel like I grew up. Something inside me changed, and I developed a greater appreciation for my life and the lives of other people.
Sure.
And so, moving here to Chicago, I should say, I started feeling this sense of anxiety that that reminded me of living in Los Angeles.
Okay. Things sped up again.
They did.
Okay.
And I wanted to hold on to the nuances that I encountered in a much slower space. Just having more time to talk to people, having more time with people.
Sure.
It feels so much more difficult to do in a larger city, mostly because it takes more time to get around.
Sure.
And there's more to do in a bigger city. And so people are occupied with their own lives and with events. And so I needed to find a way to slow down my way of thinking and be okay with everything moving quickly around me, and not feel like I had to fit into that that pace of life.
Acknowledge the tide, but don't necessarily join the tide.
Exactly.
When it presents itself.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I think finding something that drew me back to my childhood, which was a time that felt much slower. It was a time where I felt that I could connect with people in a way that my adult life in Los Angeles didn't allow me to do.
Sure.
And so, so writing these poems and trying to understand religion and my faith, I think really helped me focus on what I liked about living in these rural communities, and it was really just the people.
Well, religion and faith come into poetry just from the inception of poetry. Essentially, what I've really appreciated recently is, and I ended up being a religious studies minor by accident. There was a teacher at my school that was just fantastic, and I would just take every class that he taught. And right before I graduated, they said, if you sign this paper, you're a religious studies minor. So I said, okay. But in those studies and in what I found in poetry is sort of the same thing that I felt more of a swelling recently in the last 4 or 5 years. And it's people like you, and it's people, I did a reading with Kaba Akbar not too long ago, and people like Kaba, that it feels like the old sort of Sufism. It feels like ecstatics. It feels like people that are in touch with, not necessarily God, but in touch with a faith in humanity, more of a humanism. You folks keep popping up. And it's been a wonderful thing to sort of experience that and get to be in part of a sort of a community that feels like it's connecting more and more to maybe not the sublime, but to that search that we might all be on some sort of path to find our own unique sort of place in the world. And I get that when I read your work, and I get that when I read, there's a dozen or 2 dozen people that you sort of want to gravitate to and find out and get to experience that sort of with them through their work. So when you talk about faith and returning to faith and finding quietness, that's sort of where my mind goes. That you're able to find the energy to dance in a way that isn't loud, but is still beautiful and feels spiritual, even if maybe it's not. I don't know, but I feel like there's a group of people working in that same fashion that is always inspiring to me. And for me, it's been writing about humanism and things like that. I put out You Get Ornery a certain way that one of my home presses sort of let me put together a book that was 3 books in one. It was 3 humanist sequences, a violin sound in almost every place, We Are Arrows, and All the Birds Are Leaving. So like 3 books in one book. It's like a 250-page book of poetry called Many Full Hands Applauding Inelegantly. And it was all about trying to find sort of in that rush of life, trying to find your place in it, trying to find a way to experience not defenestration, but more like prostration acts, and trying to find a way to lower yourself to raise other people. And I think one of the things you do well in your searching is raise other people through the language and through that search. So that's what I think about. Yeah. But it's a fantastic time to sort of be fully engaged in the world of poetry. And so I'm excited to hear about the new projects and the things that are going to hopefully come out soon.
Me too.
What else are you excited about for the upcoming future, for 2018, as we're here just 2 days before the end of the year?
That's true. There's so many books. I just got a copy of Daniel Borzitsky's collection that's coming out next year from the University of Pittsburgh Press. It's called Lake Michigan.
This is the one, the follow-up. He won
the National Book Award of Poetry last year for the performance of Becoming Human. So this is the follow-up. And it almost begins where that one left off.
Okay.
Which is quite interesting.
That's a fascinating place to sort of go back to the... okay.
And it's all about like institutional policing, and so I'm working on a review of that.
Okay.
I just got a copy of Carmen Jimenez Smith's new book, just coming out from City Lights in April. So that should be interesting.
Sure.
A lot of Latino poets. Obviously, I spend a lot of my time with the Latino Caucus, which I started through AWP 2 years ago. So we're going into our 3rd year now, and this will be my last year serving as the moderator for the AWP panel.
Okay.
Because I can only be on it for 3 years. It's like an AWP rule. So I'm excited about making the organization fully self-sufficient. Right now we have a nonprofit sponsorship.
Nice.
And I'll be working on making the organization into a nonprofit organization next year, and hopefully transitioning into the role of director, and so I'll have my hands full next year.
It sounds like
I'm really excited about that.
Well, and it's at the beginning of the conversation, you were talking about new things to try, so it sounds like you're very busy.
Yeah, this is something very new, and I'm really excited about it.
It's tough to say no when you get your blood up about something, when you're excited to try a new endeavor. Like, it's difficult to say no to things.
Yeah, it is. I'm taking a short vacation at the start of the year.
Okay.
I was telling someone recently that I can't remember the last time I actually went on vacation. And so I'll be going to Florida for 4 days. It'll be brief.
But still?
Yeah. So I'll be in Fort Lauderdale with a friend who teaches at Boston College.
Great.
So I'll just be hanging out at the beach. Hopefully it'll be good. I don't know what the weather is like in Fort Lauderdale this time of year, but it should be warmer.
Well, I'll be in Naples around the same time, so we'll wave to you from across the state. But I'll get to meet first nephew. I'm excited.
Oh, so first nephew?
Yeah, I've got a sister who's about 3 years younger than me, and she's just had her first. It's a baby boy, so get to meet him. I sent him an excellent Christmas present. His room is nautical themed, and I found a poster of a shark going through the ocean with a giraffe on his shoulders and a giant sword. So it's just the kind of hilarity I believe he needs. And I will be that uncle, apparently. So
oh, that's great. Oh, congratulations.
So it's all very neat, except for the poster. Anyway, but it's exciting, and I really appreciate you taking the time to talking about this. And I'm excited to see the chapbook whenever it comes out in the full collection, and to see sort of how the translation and your poems all mingle together. So that'll be exciting.
Thank you.
Thank you. So that is going to be the end.